So let's talk about voter apathy.
Do we have to?
So why do you think that voters are apathetic?
So why do we think that voters are apathetic? There's a lot of reasons, right? But one thing I want to clarify before we go into the conversation, because whenever we talk about voter apathy, usually it's a Democrat talking about voter apathy, and they tend to confuse it with laziness, and I think we have to draw those distinctions right away, right?
So, sorry.
No, because I mean the thing is, if we're going to really, take on the enterprise of voter engagement, we need to not assume that those two things are linked.
Yeah.
But apathy is a completely different animal. A lot of the apathy that we see is not based on people just not caring. It probably started off as people caring sincerely, but having those cares and those concerns placated before elections, and then
Or dismissed.
Yeah, and only to have nothing ever come of it. And I think it's kind of important to think about that. There are external forces, right, that very often, kind of shoot people full of Novocaine, when it comes to that. So it deadens them, right? And I think that's something that we need to think about. So I want to preface this by the fact that, when we went to the Juneteenth festival, we worked a booth, right? And we didn't put a big "We are Democrats" flag. You need to vote for Democrats because of Democrats. We wanted to just engage with people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we did was we just gave out free water because it was a hot day. So we gave out something like 4 cases of water. It was crazy. It was a lot of water. And along the way, eventually people would start talking to us, and that's kind of what we wanted to happen. We wanted to have organic conversations, and we had someone come up to us and kind of discuss the fact that it didn't matter. And what she specifically said was, it didn't matter because the people running for office would never come down to a neighborhood like this. And I said, well, I'm here, and I think that made her feel a lot better.
Hopefully.
No, it didn't. I mean, she was,
No, she was.
I talked about being shot full of Novocaine a second ago. Yeah.
She walked away.
Yeah. Her sense of civic optimism was so shot full of Novocaine. I could have drilled her wisdom teeth with the Constitution and she wouldn't have been feeling it. It was just like, it was,
Okay. That's quite an analogy.
But you know what? But the thing is, that was earned, right? So let me talk about something, and I'm gonna go off on a tangent, maybe go off on a rant on this one, right?
All right.
Because I don't know her experience, right? Now I was there because I cared, but I don't know her experience. But I'll tell you something. As a person of color, elections are funny things because when you're a person of color, or when you're a community of color, candidates descend and they make all these flowery promises about how much they care, about how committed they are to changing your life experience and everything. But so they're going to fund schools. They're going to create equity. They're going to create equality. They actually say equality. They never say equity.
Yeah.
But if I were somebody in her neighborhood, the neighborhood that we were in, and the experience that she was talking about, I know for a fact that that's a lie. Because nobody's doing anything for her neighborhood. The only time that ever happens is if somebody decides it should be gentrified, and then people are priced out of it. You don't see instances of people having new avenues towards capital for entrepreneurs, right? I look back to 2009, 2010. And the fact that the Democrats own the House, the Senate, and the White House. Mm-hmm. And they could have done something about this. They could have put together comprehensive immigration reform, and they didn't, right? Because they had a number of people who went, well, I have to run again in the midterm, and I don't want to be controversial. Well, you know what? A lot of them lost anyway. But, I get a little furious about this kind of thing because that's what people of color, that's what these communities that are, that people say are apathetic, are actually dealing with. The fact that over and over again they get told that these things matter, but when it comes time for somebody to actually do something about it, nothing happens, right? I mean, yes, we will go out there and we will, go, hey, this is a tragedy, and we will take pictures of poor people and we will put up a bunch of trauma porn that shows, we're paying attention.
Yeah.
But when it actually comes to putting something on the line and not just spewing bullshit, it hasn't happened. And I think we have to change that. And you know what? We have to acknowledge that. It's not minorities who are feeling apathy. They've been bred into this. They've been lied to. They've been cheated. There's a reason that they feel let out by the system, and that's why they're apathetic. And it's a huge cross section of people. I say minorities, but it's not just minorities, right? If you look at the elderly, the aged community, seniors and everything like that, there are groups of people who depend on their votes, but then chip away at entitlements.
Yeah.
Students, same thing.
Yeah.
You're just outside of being a student.
Yeah. Well, we get told a lot that we're transient, our vote doesn't count, but then we're kind of blamed a lot when we don't turn out to vote.
If students turned out to vote,
yeah, we have these.
This county would be blah blah.
We have these two big universities. If they came out to vote and if they actually cared, then everything would change. But that's not the whole story.
No, it's not the whole story. And you know what? And that's actually an inaccurate representation, because one of the cool things about having a university that's become its own precinct is that now we can track that. We can see that far and above anybody else, any other precinct, last year in the midterms, students turned out more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And why was that? Because they had a candidate, in Beto O'Rourke, the Senate, who actually paid attention to them and listened to them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people have to do. If you're going to beat apathy, you actually have to engage people, listen to them, and respect them.
So besides the college community, what other communities do you think are trying to work towards increasing that turnout? I know we've got a community sort of southwest of us, right? Southwest, almost out of Argyle.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. When we talk about engaging people, you have to inspire people, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking specifically about Ropes and Ranch.
Yeah.
And
they've got a good organization.
they do. They do. And I think that's kind of inspiring. I remember last year, we had or a couple of years ago, I guess it's been a couple of years ago at this point, I had to go out and speak, at Ropes and Ranch. And I remember people were like, you're this kind of, leftist punk, whatever, you know what I mean? It was very condescending. How can you possibly reach these Democrats who are supposed to be, significantly more conservative and everything? They can't relate to this experience that young people have or you have or blah blah. And I went, no, we can do this. We can have a real conversation. And one of the things that everyone else forgot when they were trying to mitigate their message to placate something that they didn't understand was the fact that these people who live in this who live in this community, yes, they are in their 60s, they're in their 70s. You know what? They took part in marches. They organized. They were there fighting a system to try and make a better world. Yeah. Right. And what everybody forgets is that the people who were doing that, 50 years ago, still feel the same way. The difference is they're not, college students, lashing out at a system for themselves. They are adults, basically fighting to save their children and their grandchildren, fighting for something that is bigger themselves and beyond themselves. And I think, when we want to talk about inspiring people, I think that's something that we need to remember. You need to tap into the things that mean something to people. Same thing happens with students. Like I said, Beto came out. He inspired students. At UNT, they came out in huge numbers, and we need to actually treat everyone as a person and treat them with the respect that they deserve. Okay, I'm going to circle right back.
Okay.
I said we were about to stop. I'm going to say one thing. This can be my closing statement. A while back, I was asked a question about how I would make this transition, right? If you are elected to office, how do you make the transition from being an activist advocate to a representative? And my thought was, you don't. If you're doing this for the right reason, you're doing this for people. And you're doing this to represent and fight for the things that people need to make their lives better, to make their lives livable, to make their lives valuable, and everything. And if we do that and stop going in and being timid, if we actually fight for things, people will get it, and voter apathy will take care of itself. We always end when I love a song.